confirm.
Broadcast is commenced.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of full council on Monday the 7th of June 2021. Before we commence with the meeting this evening, please can I advise, as indicated on the agenda for this meeting of full council is a non-decision making meeting of Braintree District Council. I can confirm that the council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its virtual meetings, and these are as follows. Please only speak when the chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the chairman know that you wish to speak through the chat function. The chairman will introduce speakers in the order at which the request to speak has been made, unless there is a point of order at which we will give way. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting. Members are asked to mute your microphone when you're not speaking and to consider turning off your video feed if there is interference on your connection to the meeting. Please bear in mind there may be a slight delay between speakers and other attendees hearing you. When referring to reports, please quote the relevant page and paragraph number. There is private business on the agenda this evening. Should this meeting move into private session, members are reminded it is their responsibility to make sure their venue and connection are private. If you lose connection at all, please rejoin the meeting immediately and I will readmit you into the meeting. If you have any further difficulties, please email me and I'll do my best to assist you through the email functions. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the access to information rules of FOI, EIR. It is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified with a prefix of CLLR before their name, with the exception of the chairman and vice chairman of the council. There are officers in attendance and they are identified with a prefix of officer before their name. Officers will only speak when invited to do so by the chairman. There is a minute taker for this meeting and a meeting facilitator. Chairman, for this meeting, I can confirm that we have apologies from the following members. Apologies have been received from Councillor Mary Cunningham, Councillor Wendy Scattergood and Councillor Dean Wallace. I can confirm this meeting is quorum and may proceed. I now hand the meeting over to Mrs. Sue Wilson. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I do apologise, your microphone is switched off. Could you start again, please?
Sorry, I'll say it all again now. Yes, good evening. I'm Councillor Sue Wilson and currently I'm the chairman of this council and will be chairing the meeting tonight of the full council. I'd like to open this virtual meeting of full council by welcoming members and the public who are viewing the meeting via the council's YouTube channel. I'm being assisted by a meeting facilitator who will help me identify when people want to speak and manage the notifications through the chat function. I can't see all of you, so I can ask that you use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak or raise a procedural point. Members, set out on the agenda of this meeting of full council is a non-decision making meeting. This meeting has been called to enable members of this council to discuss the matters listed on the agenda. Should decisions be required following this meeting, those decisions will be taken by the Chief Executive in accordance with the Council's officer scheme of delegation. During this meeting, with the exception for the approval of the minutes, I will not be seeking your agreement to note items or asking members to vote on any items. Members, we have 3 hours set aside for this meeting and I'd be very grateful if members could keep their speeches concise in order to assist with ensuring that we conclude this meeting within the time allocated. Members, due to the level of concentration required during these virtual meetings, if it is appropriate to do so, I will call for a 5-minute recess at an appropriate time in the agenda. In calling this recess, I will be seeking members' agreement at that time. Members, please can I advise that in order to ensure a fair approach to the discussions this evening, I will be asked that everyone indicates they want to speak using the chat function. I will then, rather than take them in the order they appear, will use my discretion to take members from each of the political groups in turn. Thank you, members, and I will now proceed to the first item of business. Agenda number 1, apologies for absence. And I think Emma just said we've received apologies from Mrs. Wendy Scattergood, Mrs. Mary Cunningham, and Mr. Dean Wallace. Are there any further apologies to note?
Chairman, if I may, we've had further apologies. These are from Councillor. Sorry, I do apologise, Chairman. There are no further apologies given. I do apologise. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, and we'll now go on to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Members, for this item, I will be seeking your agreement and silence will be assent. Do any members have any objection to the approval of the minutes as an accurate record of the annual general meeting of full council held on the 19th of April 2021?
Madam Chairman, did you do declarations?
That comes after this. Thank you very much. So I'm taking it that as there's dead silence, everybody is in assent. Okay. Thank you, members. We'll proceed to item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? If so, can you please state the item and the nature of your interest? Councillor Tom Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a non-pecuniary interest in relation to item 10. I'm a non-executive member of the Earls Colne to Kelvedon Plus Cycling Group, and I've been a member of Coggeshall Neighbourhood Plan Group, both from the start. Thank you.
Right. That seems to be it. Does anyone else have any? Oh, yes, here we are. Councillor Nick Unsworth.
Yes, sorry for the slight delay. Like Councillor Walsh, I'm a member of the EC2K cycling group within item 10. Thank you.
Chairman, you also have Councillor Hensman, who's indicated.
Oh, is it? Councillor Hensman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I have an MPI in relation to the announcement of the Chairman's Charities at item 5, as I am a member of the CVRPS that you've chosen for this year. Thank you.
Councillor Joanne Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Item 10, I'm a member of the Earls Colne to Kelvedon Cycle Group and also a member of the Housestead part of that group as well, which is a separate group. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Butland.
Madam Chairman, the Colne MPI is a member of Essex County Council, to whom reference is made in a number of items on the agenda tonight.
Councillor Tom Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest also as a member of Essex County Council. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Swear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to declare an MPI as a member of Essex County Council. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Thorogood.
Yeah, just to follow again, I'm a member of Essex County Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, before you take the next item of business, could I just please check the connection of 2 members who have joined the meeting since we've commenced? Yep. Councillor Everard, could we just test your connection to the meeting, please?
Emma, I hope you can hear me.
We can. Thank you very much, Councillor Everard. And Councillor Darren White, can we just test your connection to the meeting, please?
Can you hear me?
We can. That's lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor White. Thank you very much, Chairman, for that. I now hand the meeting back to you. Thank you.
I can't see anybody else that wants to declare an interest. Okay. I shall now proceed to item 4, public question time. There are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting for full council, so I will proceed to the next item of business, agenda item 5, announcements and statements from the chairman and the leader of the council. Members, it is with great sadness that I advise you of the death of a former colleague, Malcolm Allard. Malcolm was first elected in 1983 and he served continuously until 2003, representing Labour for Bocking North Ward. Malcolm was Vice Chairman of the Council in 96-97 and then Chairman of the Council in 97 to 98. He was also the Chairman of the Environmental Services Committee from 1991 until 1996 and was also the Council's representative for Braintree and District Society for Mentally Handicapped, MENCAP, and also for Bocking Windmill. The funeral is going to be held on Wednesday, the 23rd of June at 12:30 at the Three Counties Crematorium. The funeral has been planned by Malcolm's family to be within the current COVID limits. Donations can be made to Braintree District Council. No, sorry, forget that. Braintree and District Society for Mentally Handicapped, MENCAP, by Janet Davis, Funeral Director. On behalf of the Council, I would like to formally express our sincere condolences to Malcolm's family. Members, you will also recall that we have had 2 by-elections on the 6th of May, and I'd like to welcome Councillor William Coursener and Councillor Darren White to the Council and to their first meeting of full Council. I have to find you on my screen. Councillor Coursener represents the ward of Witham South and Councillor Darren White represents the ward of Hatfield, Peveril and Tarling. At the AGM, I advised that I would announce the charities that I would be supporting this civic year. And I've chosen to support 3 charities, which are the Colne Valley Railway Preservation Society Limited, Friends of the Flitch Way and Homestart Essex. I will now invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to make any announcements. Councillor Butland.
I have no announcements, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. We will proceed with item number 6.
Chairman, I do apologise for interrupting again, but Councillor Hicks has joined the meeting through the last item. So can I ask Councillor Hicks to test his connection to the meeting, please?
Loud and clear, Emma. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. We've got a good connection to you. Thank you. Chairman, there should be no further interruptions for members joining. Thank you.
Right. I'm now going to item 6, Braintree Public Realm Project. Agenda item number 6, Braintree Public Realm Project. Members, before I invite Tom Cunningham to speak on this item, I would remind members that there is a confidential appendix to this report. As members will be aware, generally the Council seeks to operate in an open and transparent way, with as much information as possible in the public domain. From time to time, for a number of reasons, in this case the Council's commercial interests, it is important that key elements of information are kept confidential. This item is set out on pages 6 to 13 of your agenda, and I'd like to invite Councillor Tom Cunningham, Cabinet Member for Economic Development, to introduce and speak to the item. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. With the passing of time, it seems strange to think that 3 years ago, almost to the day, we moved proposals, financial proposals, to progress with the current Victoria Square Manor Street development. Following that, we moved proposals for the much wanted pedestrianisation and public realm scheme. No one at the time could have envisaged the 3 years that would follow and what the position we would find ourselves in through the year 2020. It's worth remembering, and Madam Chairman, sorry, to complement my introducing of the report, there should be a presentation coming on screen, which, thanks to the miracles of officer technology, is appearing absolutely now in front of you. And Kim Cole is very kindly going to push the button on my behalf. So it's worth remembering, looking back, that the origins of the Braintree Pedestrian Public Realm project go back several years. And this version came to fruition on the back of a series of workshops with businesses, retailers, community groups and residents during the 2016-2017 year. In 2016, those associated with the town of Braintree were rather disturbed by the negative press that was reporting Braintree at the time as a town that was dying. And for those associated with the town, that was something that we didn't recognise. We needed that our town centres needed investment. They needed to change to face the modern challenges of the third decade of the 20th century. But the town of Braintree certainly wasn't dying. Through working together, we identified that Braintree needed to be a place that promoted its heritage, where people came to shop locally, spend time and socialise, and the public realm improvements needed to address the unsatisfactory state of the high street, which was the worst of both worlds in terms of access and pedestrianisation, with several concerning defects. Consultation took place in the following years, with the town of Braintree finding favour with the Braintree District Council's plans to improve the town. We agreed a capital budget. The presentation's gone, but I'm sure it'll come up in a second. In December 2019, including £1 million of Department for Transport funding, 750,000 of Essex County Council funding, and 1.2 million from our own Braintree District Town Centre Improvement Funds. Works commenced during 2021, with Lot 1 completed successfully. Lot 2 procurement was undertaken during the summer of that year, and we now find ourselves in the position where we seek approval to complete the project. If we can go to the programme updates slide, please. Just right, just going to the full screen version. So, successful completion of, so where we are at the moment.
It's fine.
Successful completion of all enabling works. The Bank Street one-way and primary disabled bay parking are there in situation. The Fairfield Road contraflow bus lane has been completed. The northern section of Fairfield Road to accommodate not only the change in bus movements as a result of the new Victoria Square transport interchange, but future-proof, ready for any sustainable transport obligations and commitments in the future. There are new bus stops outside the foyer on St Michael's Road, new disabled bays in St Michael's Lane. The presentation has gone again, but there are also loading bays in Drury Lane and the adjustment to the extent of the restricted parking area. The parking in Manor Street and Victoria Street is no longer there. So if we could go to the first picture of the presentation, because I'm very keen for members to get a feel of how far we have come in the last 15 months. As you can see, this is the High Street looking towards the junction of Bank Street. From these pictures, you can see the extent of the works that needed to be undertaken to remove the existing failing surface to be replaced by the new modern surface, which includes quality paving and quality resin. Next picture, please. Thank you. And here we are. Here was Braintree Town Centre, Braintree High Street, before the improvements took place, noticing the absolute failure of the structural surface of the main highway. We had this situation in Braintree where the High Street was pedestrianised for access only, but of course was the major bus route. And you can see the groove where the large double-decker buses had impacted on the highway. So that's before the improvements. Now, here we are, the High Street in a similar place, a similar location where the bus stop used to be. And before the pedestrianisation works took place and before the pandemic, this is, of course, where we welcomed our monthly street markets full of stalls reaching from the Great Square right down to the High Street, moving progressively further down the High Street as the street markets started to gather local enthusiasm. And we look forward to those returning, hopefully, once COVID restrictions fully allow. You will see a black mark of tarmac, it's a considerable black square, and colleagues will be aware of minor black squares of tarmac. The minor black squares are a legacy of remedial works that had to be undertaken by an interim contractor once the relationship with the previous contractor ended and they left site. This large area will be a site of planting of trees and will add to the aesthetic nature of the aesthetic aspirations of the wider project. Could we move to the next picture, please? Thank you very much, Kim. Now, this is New Street and the little square. It's often a part of town that has been forgotten in terms of activity, although it's a popular cut-through. Local retailers round there and traders have said that it doesn't necessarily feature as heavily in Christmas celebrations and other events. We've taken the opportunity to install some quality resin adjacent to the post office, and as in pictures perhaps better indicated or better shown in your printed agenda document, you'll see the moving of York stone for it to be installed in this vicinity. This York stone has been recovered from other parts of the town centre and is adding value to the New Street part of the town. Go to the next picture, please. And here we have the Market Square. Despite the pause in significant works during the recent months, interim works were able to be undertaken in this vicinity, and those who know the area will be aware that resin was applied in the area adjacent to Tesco's. Considerable amount of levelling work as part of the public realm will be undertaken in the Market Square. A lot of that has been done already, and it's now ready for the application of resin. We look forward to the market, our usual market, our twice weekly Braintree market, having unfettered or uncompromised access back in their Market Square. But on completion, we also look forward to that series of events in what is quite a unique space in our town, in the town centre of Braintree. And of course, all being well, we look forward to having this being the centre point of the Christmas light switch on celebrations later on the year, Madam Chairman, and we look forward, fingers crossed, to being with you for that. And we look forward to a Christmas celebration better than the very successful one we had in 2019. Could move to the next slide, please. And this is the end of the High Street, as we head towards the water fountain. This is the part of town where often footfall has not reached this part of town as successfully as we would have hoped. Simply not enough people travel down this far down the High Street. Once again, you can see in this before picture the extent of the highway's frailties, but also the rather tired looking state of the early 90s cobbles. If we compare that with now, you will see that you'll see the resin in place in front of the tea room with an outdoor area for customers to sit and enjoy, but you'll also see the logical traffic flow of traffic coming from St Michael's Lane at the end of the full pedestrianised part of the improvements. A radical improvement, and we look forward to, with the improved public realm, meaning this end of town is far more enticing for those who come to visit. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, options. We'll be discussing in more detail the issues in private session. But at this stage, we've taken the option to include some additional features. One of those being enhancing the historical offer of the project. This was always a key element of our objectives for town centre improvements in Braintree, promoting its unique history. We will be committing to new monoliths in line with additional signposting and waymarking that we hope to bring in our other town centre improvements in both Witham and History that really promote the proud history of the town of Braintree. We're also taking this opportunity to ensure that mitigation against hostile vehicles is in place. There is some hostile vehicle mitigation. We want to increase the standard of that to ensure it is as compliant as it needs to be. The timelines. The project is delayed. There is no doubt about that, and that is very regrettable. However, I can report that works in the vicinity of the Great Square will be completed by mid-June 2021. And for those less familiar with the Great Square is the area slightly up the road from the Market Square. And where we have our street markets, it tends to be where the food is served. The catering units and the catering stalls tend to congregate in that square. So that is the Great Square. Improvements completed mid-June 2021. New street improvements also completed in mid-June 2021, with the Market Square improvements hopefully being completed by mid-July 2021. Madam Chairman, I don't think there's anything else I can add at this moment. There's no more detail I can go into without moving into public question time. Thank you very much to Kim for facilitating that presentation, which I hope members found interesting and useful. Therefore, I'll draw to a close at this moment and through you request that we go into private session. Thank you.
Chairman, your microphone switched off, please.
Right, sorry, I'm not very quick on the unmuting business. Members, it's often the case that members can debate the substantial issues surrounding the proposals without the need to specifically refer to the confidential elements. Given this and members' earlier indication, we will keep the debate open and public. Can I confirm that having heard the introduction of the report by Councillor Tom Cunningham, that members are happy to proceed in public and do not wish to raise elements in the debate about the private information? Do any members intend to raise confidential matters during the debate on this item? Please indicate via the chat function.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, Councillor Abbott here. I had indicated in writing before the meeting started and also on the chat function that I do wish to raise 3 matters in private session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. I can confirm that members have indicated that they now wish to raise matters set out in the confidential appendix to this report. Consequently, I will move this meeting into private session on the basis that the debate will refer to confidential information exempt from disclosure under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. We will need to pause the public broadcast, but we will return to public session at the conclusion of the debate on agenda item 6. And I would encourage any members of the public to continue viewing, and we will return as soon as possible. Members of the public watching on the Council's YouTube channel will now be moving into private session, and the broadcast of this meeting will be temporarily suspended. We will reconvene the public meeting as soon as possible. I will now pause to allow for the broadcast to be paused during the private session.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, members, can I please ask that you mute your microphones while we transition from public session into private session? Webcasting officer, please can I ask you to stop the broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel and confirm.
Yes, the broadcast is now live.
Thank you very much, Webcasting Officer. Chairman, I'll hand the meeting back to you. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the public watching this meeting. We have reconvened following the consideration of an item in private. We will now move on to the next item of business, agenda item number 7, response from Cabinet to the scrutiny review into leisure provision and access to sport in the district 2021. This item is set out on pages 14 to 44 of the agenda, and I would like to invite Councillor Peter Tattersley, Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, to set out the Cabinet's response to the scrutiny review. Councillor Tattersley, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This scrutiny review into leisure provision and access to sport in the district, I think, was a really well-documented, comprehensive report by the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee, who consulted an impressive list of stakeholders who provided some clear evidence to the committee. And I think that anyone reading the report will have the confidence in the, I was going to say comprehensiveness, I'm not sure that's a word, Madam Chairman, but you know what I mean, the comprehensiveness of the report and the manner in which they also help support a couple of the council's corporate objectives, which is always a nice addition to make in these reports, which would be a sustainable environment and a great place to live, work and play, and residents live well and healthily in resilient communities where residents feel supported. And I think that the report does that extremely well. The Cabinet considered the recommendation in the context of the Live Well strategy produced in 2019, and the Be Well strategy, which runs from 2018 to 2021. These strategies, of course, were due to be reviewed this year, but our work on COVID has delayed them slightly. But I've included both strategies in the report for information in order that members can see how the scrutiny report and the two strategies complement each other. There are 7 key recommendations in the report, together with Cabinet's response to these specific recommendations. In Appendix 4, there's an action plan based on the recommendation with target dates, and the individual or organisation responsible for carrying out the scrutiny committee recommendations. As I've said, when this report was first reported to Council on the 7th of December 2020, the impact of COVID on officers' workload was not really apparent then, and there'll inevitably be some slippage which will need to be addressed as we move forward. All the recommendations are key, but I've identified a couple which have been which representations have been made specifically to me and are particularly relevant and important to our communities. Madam Chairman, I'm just going to identify 3 recommendations, but Cabinet has agreed to support all the recommendations. We're not excluding any, but the 3 that I wanted to pick out, and I'm on page 37, is recommendation 1. And I think of all the issues about sport provision in the district, this has been the one that's exercised both the planning committee and an awful number of organisations across the district. And that is that the council should review its planning policy with regard to planning permissions in order to address the issues regarding land usage and in turn allow more sites to be utilised accordingly for leisure facilities. And what's been interesting about this one is that it looks as though we've not been on our own on that one, because the government have announced a new commercial use class E, which because of the change of use, because of the category change, it means that a change of use doesn't need planning permission. Specifically, we used to have problems where we designate an area as employment land, there was a reluctance to allow sporting facilities to be put into those areas. That now has been changed and it doesn't need the same planning permission. Of course, there'll still be external appearances and so on, where permission will need to be. But it does now allow sports provision in commercial premises, and that's really welcomed. And I'm pleased to see that that was a prominent point made by the Scrutiny Commission. The next recommendation I want to highlight, Madam Chairman, is recommendation 2, where the committee questioned why only 12 out of 53 of the district schools participate in the daily.
The recording has stopped.
Shall I continue?
Apologies, Councillor Tattersley. That was an administrative mark on the meeting, so I do apologise for interrupting you.
Okay, I'm in full flow as well. It says that the council should review why only 12 of 53 of the district schools participate in the Daily Mile. I have to say that since the report was produced, and we're going back to December, of course, we've now got 29 of the 53 primary schools engaging in the Daily Mile or similar projects, such as the Golden Mile. Now, the council are clearly not able to require schools to participate. However, the Live Well Child Officer will clearly support and encourage this locally across all the infant and primary schools in the district. And I think as we move further out of lockdown, there'll be a lot more emphasis put on this initiative when the schools aren't quite as tied up with the COVID implications. The final recommendation, well, not the final one, but the next recommendation I want to identify is recommendation 7, which is on page 40. And it fits nicely with recommendation 5, I think. And this is about the council providing more information to wider groups of people across the district about the leisure provision that is available. We think that we provide quite good information, but the more that this review went on, it's clear that an awful lot of parish and voluntary groups aren't aware about the extent of the sporting facilities that are available across the district, and that recommendation will be quite key for that one. So, Madam Chairman, the Council's asked to note the Cabinet responses to the recommendation of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee as set out in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Can you use the chat function, please? Councillor Abbott.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I agree with Councillor Tattersley. There are a number of welcome recommendations and points in the action plan in the documents. But I wish to focus on one issue in particular, which I think the opportunities are still not being taken up sufficiently by the council. I know we have the draft cycling strategy out to consultation, so it could be said it's early days yet. But we have got some concerning data on levels of activity and health in the district. That's captured in the various documents. And so I would say surely we should be doing more and faster on cycling, which I believe would meet 3 out of the 4 of the Be Well strategy priorities. Now, contrary to what we were being told this time last year, actually traffic levels are pretty much back up now to the levels they were pre-COVID, which acts as a significant disincentive to people in significant areas of the district, not everywhere, but significant areas to people cycling. So we would argue that we need transformational levels of safe cycling provision, not just within the towns, but also between them and the villages. And that's not to say that what's not in the pipeline, such as EC2K and Braintree Town Centre, are not welcome. Of course they are. But in order to deliver on safe cycling across the district and much improved opportunities for health for those who can cycle, and I know it's not everybody, but for those who can, we surely should be really reaching out on this agenda to get safe cycling routes right across the district in as quickly as possible. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gabrielle Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to echo the comments made by Councillor Tattersley on recommendation 1 and the change of use class E. As a member of the planning committee, I know we have been in the unenviable position more than once of having to refuse permission for dance club, gymnastic groups to move into alternative premises because it was against policy, because the units they wanted to move into were designated for employment use, and they were not nice or good decisions to have to make. We do, of course, need to be mindful of protecting our employment sites. It is very important we do that, but it doesn't mean that there might be occasions where we feel it is suitable for somebody to relocate onto a business park, onto alternative premises, because they are expanding and in order for them to be able to continue. So I very much support that. I think it is to be welcomed, and hopefully it will give some reassurance to groups who are looking for alternative premises. You know, every application will have to be dealt with separately and on its merits, but overall, I think it's a very good move. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Courtauld.
Thank you, Chair. As Vice Chairman of the Partnership Scrutiny Group, I thank the Cabinet for their response to our review, and echoing Councillor Tattersley and Councillor Spray, I'd like to make the following comments, which is that we too particularly welcome the announcement by the government of a change of use within the E category so that sports provision is now allowed in commercial premises. This will be a huge benefit to dance, gyms and sports clubs generally. And in the past, their applications to use these spaces have been turned down, which seemed particularly tragic, and the premises have remained empty. So we are very pleased by that. The significant improvement in numbers of primary schools now taking part in the Daily Mile, or the Golden Mile, is also very good news. With a dedicated officer from Essex County Council responsible for delivery of this, and support still forthcoming from BDC through the Live Well child officer, we may well see every primary school involved, which would be a huge benefit to child health and well-being. Walking was one of the activities in which there was particular interest from large numbers of the older population, and there was concern about the availability of information on how to access walking groups. So we are also very pleased that this has been addressed in several areas by Community 360 and by volunteers. Finally, it's good to note that work will be done to improve communication with the wider district, linking hospitality venues and tourism partnerships to improve informal activity, particularly in rural areas like my ward, to the benefit of both residents and hospitality businesses. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coursener. Councillor Coursener, yeah.
Councillor Coursener, your microphone doesn't appear to be working.
Is it better now?
It is, thank you. Would you like to start
All right.
again, please?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Tattersley, for presenting on this strategy. And it's really exciting times for this strategy to be out just after the pandemic, and as we go out to experience new lives. Quite recently, it was interesting to go out and hug someone. But as we are going to be going out to start exercising, this strategy really works. The beauty of all strategies is when it's implemented. So during execution, I can see that there's enough provisions being made to gather enough data, analyze data, and then use the data to make the necessary changes. I hope we are agile about this so that when there are any changes during the roadmap, we can implement them. But so far, I'm really impressed, and I look forward to seeing the strategy being implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have anybody else who wants to speak. Anybody? No? Right, thank you very much. Councillor Tattersley, do you wish to respond to any of the comments made by members?
Yes, if I may, Madam Chairman, just very briefly. Can I firstly congratulate Councillor Abbott on the wonderful clarity that he's getting through his microphone these days. I've got no grumbles whatsoever about being able to hear or irritating Tinnitus business. On the recommendation 6 is all about, well, it's not all about, but we included quite a bit of detail on that about the about cycling and encouraging residents and visitors to use the cycling paths and what have you, particularly around the Great Notley Country Park. But I think before I get too hung up and detailed about cycling, I think we should wait and see what comes in the cycling strategy that Councillor Ritchie will be presenting pretty soon. And I think any issues that we've got, and I think we're on the same hymn sheet with that, Councillor Abbott. We'll see what the cycling strategy says before we get too involved in that. Can I thank as well Councillor Spray for her comments? I think that those comments will be received with some enthusiasm amongst some of our groups, particularly the dance group and the basketball teams. I think they'll be delighted in that one. Councillor Corsiner, thanks again for your comments. They're really helpful, and I'm really pleased to see that we're getting increased enthusiasm about sporting facilities across the district. I just wanted to mention, and I ought to have done before I finished, about it's all well and good having these recommendations coming through, but we need to make sure that they are actually carried out. And we do this through a very well established processes. The recommendations will be monitored through the portfolio briefings that myself have with the corporate director on a pretty regular basis. There are the performance management reports that go to cabinet, of course. In my cabinet member report to council, I often include elements that have cropped up in scrutiny, and of course I'd be very happy to attend in person to a further meeting of the scrutiny group, if invited, to answer any specific questions and to clarify any areas where they feel there's any slippage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tattersley. This item was to note only, and therefore we are not required to vote. So we will move. No, we won't move to the next item because we're going to have a comfort break. We're now approaching 3-hour point for the meeting. If any members wish to extend...
Madam Chairman, sorry if I may interrupt.
I'm reading the wrong bit, obviously.
That's absolutely fine. Members, the meeting's been convened for an hour and a half. It might be a natural point to have a 5-minute comfort break. Therefore, I will hand over to the meeting facilitator to pause the YouTube channel, and then we will reconvene in 5 minutes. If I could just pause whilst we pause the YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Webcasting officer, could we please suspend the broadcast on the YouTube channel to show that the meeting is adjourned? The time is 20:37. The meeting will adjourn for 5 minutes. A message will go on the chat function to recall all members. Please can I ask members to have your cameras and your microphones switched off during the during the period of the adjournment. Webcasting officer, please can you confirm that the broadcast And confirm.
Webcast is live.
Thank you very much, members. We are reconvening this meeting at 8:44. I will now hand back over to the chairman to attend to agenda item 8. Thank you, Chairman.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope that was a good break. And now we move on to agenda item number 8. Response from Cabinet to the scrutiny review into the childhood vaccinations programme in the district 2019. This item is set out on pages 45 to 47 of the agenda. I would like to invite Councillor Peter Tattersley, Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, to set out the Cabinet's response to the scrutiny review. Councillor Tattersley, please proceed.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chairman. The scrutiny report into childhood vaccinations. I'm always impressed by the diligent and enthusiastic way these scrutiny reports are carried out, and the support that they always seem to achieve from partners. In fact, the contributors in this particular report were impressive. They had the Director of Public Health, Mark Docherty, who I think has actually been outstanding in this COVID outbreak. Some of the initiatives and forecasts that he made have proved to be absolutely spot on. And I think that when he starts to make specific comments about activities, I think you have no option but to believe and understand what he said. But apart from Dr. Docherty, we also had the clinical leads and officers of National Health Service in England. And I have every confidence that when the Community Development Scrutiny Committee concluded that they didn't identify any issues to address in our district regarding the childhood vaccination programme, that has to be a vindication for the findings that they did actually make. Now, this review was carried out before the COVID epidemic, and the hugely successful vaccine rollout by the government and the NHS. But we can't consider this report in isolation from the vaccine rollout. And I'm pleased to announce that we have provided our sports facilities in the Town Hall Centre to act as childhood vaccination centres during the second lockdown period in order to free up the major centres for the much larger scale. And I think that the council should be pleased that we did play such a good part in that one. Now, the council will, of course, continue to support the childhood vaccination programme wherever we can. And of course, we will contribute to any review of the COVID-19 vaccine rollout as the pandemic subsides. As I said, there are no issues arising from the report, Madam Chairman, so I'm happy to present it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tattersley. Do any members wish to speak on this item? And I can see that Councillor Garrett would like to say something.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I was the chairman for this group when this scrutiny review took place, which started in 2019, so it's quite some time ago. It was, in fact, in response to a national movement to increase the uptake of childhood vaccinations, particularly for diseases such as measles and rubella. And I was delighted to see that it indicated that the level of vaccination uptake in the Braintree district was in alignment with the rates for Mid-Essex and were also slightly above that of the national average. So it was definitely a very worthwhile review, even though there are no recommendations. So really, I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor Tattersley and thank him also for the next steps where he's mentioned about the findings from the rollout of the COVID vaccination programme, and that will be fed back to government departments and council roles will be considered and fed into future policy. So I think it's been very reassuring for people in our district, particularly parents. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Right. Would anyone else? I don't have anybody else who would like to speak. Councillor Tattersley, do you wish to respond to the comment?
No, I think Councillor Garrard presented it in a far more eloquent way than I could ever achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. This item was to note only, and therefore we are not required to vote. So we will move on to the next item of business, agenda item number 9, response from Cabinet to the scrutiny review into community woodlands. This item is set out on pages 48 to
Chairman, your microphone is switched off. Could you please put your microphone back on, please?
Sorry, very loose this. This item is set out on pages 48 to 55 of the agenda. I would like to invite Councillor Mrs. Wendy Schmidt, Cabinet Member for the Environment, to set out the Cabinet's response to the scrutiny review. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, please commence.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As Councillor Tattersley has already alluded to, the enthusiasm for the scrutiny groups is always very pleasing to see. And so, of course, I was very, very, very pleased to see that they were looking at woodlands. As many of you know, trees are extremely dear to my heart. And I'm glad that the group, in fact, went a little further and looked at trees as a whole, not just at the community woodland aspect of it. I will go through one or two particular parts. The first one is the recommendation 1 of planting more trees to be monitored and measured. Now this I found very frustrating because we have planted so many trees in BDC. That has been the absolute delight of being a member of this council, is that for 18 years I've been able to indulge in my passion of planting trees. First of all, through the Braintree local area committee that we had a living landscapes committee, and many of the trees in and around Braintree town centre were planted because of the work done by that group. Sadly, not everyone likes trees. I always hate autumn coming, because I invariably get emails from people because the council's trees are dropping leaves on their land or their drive, etc. And sadly, the landscapes department, it's almost a weekly thing where they get people complaining trees should come down because they spoil their view, their light, etc. So we do have to accept that not everybody loves trees, which is very sad, because Britain is amongst the most deprived nations of tree cover. For example, we have 13% only of woodland cover compared to 30% in Germany and 31% in France. But that's it, you know, different people like different things. So sadly, as I said, over the years, well, sadly, no, I'm delighted. We have planted huge numbers of trees with school groups or all sorts of community groups, but of course we didn't count them. And that's what I find so frustrating, because it would be lovely to be able to say in recommendation 1 how many trees that we have already planted. But what we are doing at the moment is an audit on our own local open spaces, not so much because there's very much space left to fill, but for example, last week I was at a function and the first thing I noticed was an ailing elderly tree on our land that needs replacing. So these sort of audits are needed. I'll jump about a little bit. On recommendation 4, I hope that the chairman, first of all, I do apologise. I didn't thank the chairman, Councillor Mrs. Garrett and her group for the work that they've done. And of course, the people who collated all the information and those who came and gave information and presentations to the group. Again, it shows the enthusiasm. But, I put a little bit of my enthusiasm into item 4 recommendation and asked that it be put in that we use new information that's around now. Nowadays, you can buy biodegradable tree guards and other items like that. I have spent all my time since I've been in Braintree when delivering leaflets in removing tree ties and tree guards that were killing trees that have already been planted. And of course, they become litter, the tree guards that fall off and blow away. And so I have put in there that we should, wherever possible, encourage developers, whoever, to use biodegradable ones. The main item is several, items 5 and 12, really 3, 5 and 12 are all over the same item, which is community woodlands. It's not as simple and straightforward as it would appear. To try and get land is not easy. Councillor McKee and I have for some months been pursuing a piece of land that is absolutely made for a community woodland. It's readily accessible to the public. Footpaths are already there. And despite the fact that the owner of this land has been told that there is absolutely no chance of ever getting planning permission, they resolutely refuse to sell the land just in case. And this is the problem. Being a community woodland, it has to be accessible to the community. But as we know, around all our towns and villages, landowners are hanging on to their land in the hopes of either getting planning permission to build on it, or of course, providing food for us. And that is another important thing to think of, that we don't want to keep on importing food materials. We need to grow as much as we possibly can. It has been mentioned that there may be landowners who have pieces of land that are available that they can't use. Well, I'm pretty sure if they can't use them, there's a jolly good reason for that. There's either something wrong with the topography or the soil, or the more important part, which is accessibility. As I already alluded to, a community woodland has got to be accessible. And so I feel it's not that we don't want to do it, it is the fact that I am a realist. And these are the reasons that it's just not as easy as it might seem to make these community woodlands. But we would always be open if anyone does hear of any land or any landowners, then please, do get in contact with us and we would of course look at it. On recommendation 13, as I said right at the beginning, not everybody loves trees the way we do, and not everybody understands nature in the same way. And on recommendation 13 about improving access of signage and paths to our existing woodlands, please note that we have put in there that you don't have to always put in new paths and things, because you can end up damaging the very thing that you're wanting. And if members watched Springwatch last week, they would have seen a nature reserve where a dog was just out of control and went and ate the very avocet eggs, which was a terrible thing to happen. But this is what happens. Sadly, people have lost the connect with the countryside, and perhaps we can, through our climate change initiative and the fact that we are going to put more information onto our website, we can perhaps help educate people that we have to respect the countryside, we have to respect our trees and the natural resources. That's it more or less. I was going to say in a nutshell, which I suppose is a bit sorry when we're talking about trees. But obviously happy to take any points that are raised by members. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether any members wish to speak, but I know Councillor Abbott would like to say something.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I do. Before I speak to this item, I just wanted to respond to what Councillor Tattersley said. I haven't changed anything about my microphone or my computer. I'm sorry he's got tinnitus. I've got it very mildly as well, but I did ask him if he wanted to reflect on the comments he made at the meeting where he heard the noises and then used, I thought, an unfortunate phrase. It resulted in me asking both at County and at Braintree, was there a big problem? The answer came back, no, it took up quite a bit of officer time. So I'm glad he's hearing me loud and clear now. In respect to this report, I too would like to thank the group for all they did and for all the people who gave evidence. The Cabinet responses have got some good aspects, and I certainly agree very much with what Councillor Schmidt said about the need for tree guards to be removed or to be biodegradable, to plan what we do with tree guards. There's a big hedge planted not far from where I live where the plastic tree guards for those trees that went in about 10 years ago are now shards of plastic all over the ground, and it's a very good point, well made. Also, as members raise at planning committee, the need now to have a standard condition for irrigation of new trees on development sites, that too is very important. However, I've got some serious criticisms of this report as follows. Firstly, in relation to recommendation 3, it is not, unfortunately, the experience of a number of members on this side of the chamber, in inverted commas, that the council is actually doing everything it can to protect trees via TPOs or indeed on development sites. And I have raised many times at these meetings where, unfortunately, the council has tended to side with developers in agreeing their plans for the mass removal of trees from development sites, which I and others believe could have been not entirely avoided, but mitigated significantly. So I think she might want to look into that. Secondly, in respect to recommendations 3 and 5, there is no budget, that's true, for new community woodlands. But why is that? Well, that's because the Conservative administration voted down the GNI proposal to have a budget for community woodlands, which we made earlier this year, which would have come from New Homes bonus money. That's why there is no budget. Related to that, myself in particular, but there may be other members, have offered our experience as people who've actually commissioned and planted community woodlands to the council. You know, we're not expected to be paid for it, absolutely not. We'd love to volunteer. No take up from the administration or officers at all, using our experience, which might be able to move this forward. Another point is that, curiously, there's no reference in these recommendations to the Essex Forest Initiative by Essex County Council. That is a county-wide project to plant a very large number of trees, and I would have thought there would need to be a cross-reference to that. And overall, my feeling, and really it came out from what Councillor Schmidt said, is that this report sort of says, well, someone else can do it. Someone else can plant lots of trees. Someone else can plant community woodlands. We're not going to get involved with the details and difficulty doing it. And it's particularly interesting that in paragraph 3.6, it says, the new tree strategy, separate document, I appreciate, will ensure that the council's objectives and aspirations for new community woodlands are fully captured. But given this cabinet response, there seems to be a very low level of councillor aspiration for new community woodlands, and that doesn't fit with the health, biodiversity and climate change priorities of the council. And finally, Madam Chairman, I think it's instructive to compare what Braintree Council is doing with our neighbouring authorities. Colchester Borough Council is proposing to plant 200,000 trees, including a new community woodland in the next 5 years, and Chelmsford is planning to plant 175,000 trees. It's very clear that this administration is way behind the curve on this issue. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Santomiro.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I personally welcome the report and the ideology of the report, but also accept there are a number of challenges present. You can't simply take an inordinate number of trees and plant them if you don't have the asset to make them accessible. But on the point that you have approached landowners and they're not willing to sell, have we ever actually put out a more public appeal for land to come forward to plant a community woodland? And I appreciate it crosses over probably with planning, but is it possible that landowners are also unwilling to sell land because of confidential option agreements that are now in place, giving people hope to build on land that we would otherwise think is probably unbuildable at present?
Thank you very much, Councillor Santamaria. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I was the chairman of the scrutiny review group that reviewed this item, and it was held between October 19 and February 20, so quite some time ago. The council is responsible for about 15 woodland sites, so we explored all aspects of these woodlands, and I'm very pleased in particular with recommendation 4 about the exploration of the biodegradable tree guards, but it doesn't appear to be noted in the next steps. So I would just like to raise that point and hope that that is something that is indeed brought forward. I have, there are one or two things that, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more about, and that was for, in particular, the guidance I've suggested for town and parish councils. I do come across quite a few parish councils who get very worried about trees. First of all, it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, everybody thinks it's wonderful to plant a tree, but it's got to be watered, so therefore it's got to be near water, and the cost of maintenance can be extremely expensive. And I know that parish councils get particularly worried about that, and they just don't know where to go to get help. So my only disappointment really in this report is that there isn't a guide being produced for town and parish councils and to give them a little bit more support. But on the whole, I fully understand Councillor Schmidt's comments, because when you delve into this subject, it's not as easy as you might think. There are lots of barriers to creating more woodlands. The site, it has to be watered, it has to be looked after for quite some considerable time. And unless you've got volunteers to do that, it would be extremely costly for the council to keep, watering every day in days like today where we've had extreme sunshine. So on the whole, I'm very pleased with the review that we took, and also Councillor Schmidt's comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Bohr.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to speak about recommendation 6 on page 51. It doesn't quite, my point doesn't quite fit that recommendation. It's about insisting that to developers that certain species of tree be planted at development sites with a more robust approach to ensure appropriate trees are planted and maintained. And the response is as for recommendation 4. My point is that under the present, well, you could call it planning system or planning policy, or merely pattern of modern housing development, there are very few places created in development sites where trees could be planted. The public domain in modern residential development sites are meagre, lots of tiny, meagre little plots that are only good for planting grass or a few small shrubs. I wondered whether there's anything that we could do to tweak our policy, our planning policy, such that a certain percentage of a site was given over to space in the green space in the public domain, but more importantly, that there was at least one, some area in a site that would allow planting of forest trees. And that has to be, down to the planning system to ensure that. Another point which doesn't really fit any of the recommendations specifically, but it fits the approach of the scrutiny group, and that's looking at sites that have woodland on them, but it's a very low grade woodland, basically scrub that's grown up. Is there any possibility of improving that and upgrading it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I read a quote from a member of the Braintree District Council Cabinet that said the Conservatives will be planting more trees, trebling tree planting by 2024. And I just wonder whether we could have more detail on the Braintree numbers from now until 2024, so that we can actually benchmark this statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Hensman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I wasn't sure where to raise this one, but as I thought about it, it's probably better here, in that I was pleased to see recently where the Cabinet member had been able to ensure that the grass verges weren't cut, and it's come to fruition where all the flowers have bloomed. So it doesn't matter what's planted, whether it's trees or otherwise. Nature does a wonderful job of providing the greenery and for the insects and the habitats and so on. And I thought I may as well add, where wheels of local government do often turn slowly, it's not long to go before the 50th anniversary. Some may remember this, in that in 73 it was plant a tree, in 74 it was plant some more. So perhaps in 23 we could plant the tree, and in 24 we could plant some more, and we could plan for that for the future. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hensman. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I was a little bit surprised that I dare to use this phrase, blinkered vision of community woodlands. It doesn't have to be a woodland that's planted. If you go to any garden centre and watch the vehicles pulling out of those car parks, hundreds at a time at the weekends, many of those cars got the sunroof wide open or the boot lid open and the tree hanging out the back of it. So, you know, when people say there's nowhere to plant trees, what I'd like to know is, where are the public finding these places to plant trees? They're not just fruit trees, they are substantial trees that are going from garden centres to people's own homes. Somewhere we could look at, maybe.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Euston.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of points on this area. First, I would like to agree with the comment made earlier by Councillor Schmidt that planting the trees is fine, but they have to be maintained and protected. Unfortunately, too many times we see new trees vandalised by unknown people, and they're snapped off at the ground, and areas set aside for nature, in inverted commas, on new developments being totally neglected and overgrown, and all that happens is that they become a mess. And it may be wiser to look at implementing maintenance agreements over a longer period for developments. And my second point really was to support Councillor Santamoro's suggestion. Could we not issue a call for sites for tree planting? We do it for development. What about call for sites for tree planting? And it could be 1 or 2 trees or 100 trees. And, you know, as Councillor Hicks has just said, if we find spaces for them in our gardens, there are an awful lot of gardens in Braintree District, and quite a few of them would be big enough to take a tree. And how many would that count over a period of a year? And they would be easily maintained by the garden owner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Everard.
got it this time. Good. Yes, I'd like to comment on the when planting the trees, you worry about maintenance for water and that. On one of our housing estates in Bocking, I engaged with Greenfields and BDC to plant trees in an area which was devoid of trees. During that, we had an uncommonly dry season. It was the right time to plant trees, but it was very dry. But I was very lucky to engage and get the residents to go out and diligently water all these trees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Everard. I think that's probably the end of the question time. So thank you very much, members. Councillor Schmidt, do you wish to respond to any of the comments made by members?
Apologies, Chairman. Councillor Swear has just come in on the chat function asking to speak. Could you invite Councillor Swear to speak, please?
Councillor Swear, belatedly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, overall, I welcome this report and I think it's very good. Just a point on recommendation 7, which I think is extremely useful, and I think there's a lot of further work that could be achieved with collaboration with not only Whittle College but other universities as well, because it's not about maintenance of woodlands, but it's also about disease prevention. And if disease is cited, it's about quick action to eradicate the potential of that disease spreading through existing woodland as well. And then, of course, that would then point to recommendation 4 as well, about changing the resistant tree type to make our woodlands hardier. And of course, this is important towards the long-term biodiversity of not only those woodlands, but also the importance of our indigenous species that should be planted to encourage the appropriate animal and insect life, which has a long-term view. And of course, this all helps climate change. But although colleagues have commented about the lack of land opportunity, I think it's important to realise that various the National Farmers Union, the Country Landowners Association, and in fact, the ELMS opportunities going forward for agriculture, farming and horticulture, there will be lots of trees planted generally around the UK. And of course, Essex is one of the driest counties, so obviously that maintenance and watering of established trees is very important, and we're well aware of that. But as is being provided tonight, perhaps there is a tightening up from the planning point of that. But I think overall, that's a good recommendation, and I can see a bright future of Braintree District Council tree planting in association with the rest of Essex going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Swear. Thank you, members. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, would you wish to respond to any of the comments made by members?
Yes, please, Madam Chairman. I'm glad it's such a topic that people like to take part in. Councillor Abbott, some of the points that he's made. TPOs, there are rules and regulations with TPOs. I could read it out to you, but it's fairly long and tedious. But it is a national methodology that is used. And sadly, not all trees and all places fall into the methodology. It is available for people to read on websites, the government's tree preservation orders. What is really difficult is that they talk about amenity, and yet in law there is no such thing as amenity, which makes it really amenity value, that makes it very difficult. But as I said, there is guidance that is followed. Budget. If we found the right piece of land, the budget would be there. As I said, we found a piece of land, we had got the money, they just weren't willing to sell. And this is the thing, no matter what we do, you know, people will hang on to their piece of land and there's not a lot we can do about it. As for Councillor Abbott volunteering, obviously I wasn't aware of that. And if we ever do come across a piece of land, then I would more than happily get him involved. The Essex County Council forest planting, well, that wasn't really mentioned because that's covered in our climate change, which really this paper also will go under climate change. You know, we would love to do it. God, I would love to do it. It would make me happier than anything else, but we need to be able to get the land. Now, a couple of members have mentioned about doing a call for sites. I think possibly somehow we can try and do that. I won't hold my breath, but it would be wonderful if there really was some very magnanimous person out there who feels about the way of trees that we do. Councillor Euston, he mentions about people, oh no, it was Councillor Hicks as well. It's a similar thing about people buying trees. Indeed, yes, I mean, people do plant trees in their garden. But sadly, the sight that I hate most of all is someone buys a house with a lovely tree in the garden, and what do? The first thing is to chop the tree down. So, as I said right at the beginning, not everybody loves trees, which is very, very sad. It's so important for our future. And in the past, we have done projects where we have given trees and shrubs and bulbs to members of the public, parish councils. The biggest one, of course, was the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, where the council, we gave a good size oak tree to every ward and every parish within the district. And the vast majority of them took them up. The couple who didn't, it was purely because they hadn't got space for a fully grown oak tree. And of course, oak trees are what we want to plant because they are home to 2,600 species of living creature, which is something quite extraordinary. A guide for town and parish councils. Well, I mean, we are doing a new tree strategy. We can make that more obvious to them that they can come for help and guidance, which they can anyway, but we could make sure that that is more heavily signposted in the next tree strategy. Councillor Bohr, the planning system. Well, Councillor Bohr knows more about planning system than I do. We can't just change things. I really wish we could, but maybe the way that the country, the world is going with climate change, then maybe things will be set in stone in planning, that areas should be put aside for trees, shrubs, green spaces, or bigger ones within new housing estates. Let me see. Councillor Beavis, maybe you'd let me know who made the comment about tripling tree planting. I would be interested to know that. I think that mainly covers it. It is not lack of will. It is absolutely not lack of will. It is just finding a piece of land that someone will sell to us. As I said, I almost wish that we hadn't been planting trees for the last 18 years, because then I could sit here and say, we know we've got all these open spaces that we can put trees in, and we could add it up and come up with some huge figure to plant, but we can't because we've already done it. And that is a wonderful cross to bear, quite frankly. So other than that, I just pass the recommendation, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Smith. This item was to note only, and therefore we are not required to vote. The next item is set down for 1 hour and will take us over our 3 hours allowed for one meeting. If any member wishes to extend the meeting to enable us to deal with the remaining business as set out on the agenda, then we will need a member to move a second. Do we have a proposer to move standing orders?
Proposed move standing orders, Chair.
Seconded.
Right. And right, okay. Do I need to say who? No. I now ask members to indicate if they consent to this by way of a roll call, and I will hand over to the monitoring officer to do this.
Good evening, members. Members, please can you indicate whether you agree to the moving of standing orders to allow the meeting to continue past the 3 hours allowed? Councillor Abbott.
Agreed.
Councillor Bohr.
Against.
Councillor Beavis.
Agree.
Councillor Bowers.
Against.
Councillor Butland.
Against.
Councillor Coleridge.
Against.
Councillor Coulthard.
Against.
Councillor Cunningham.
Against.
Councillor Dervish.
Against.
Councillor Euston.
Sorry, against.
Councillor Everard.
Against.
Councillor Garud.
Against.
Councillor Hensman.
Abstain.
Councillor Hicks.
For.
Councillor Horner. Councillor Horner.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Hume.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Kilmartin.
Against.
Councillor Corsinger.
Against.
Councillor Mann.
Against.
Councillor McArdle.
Against.
Councillor McKee.
Against.
Councillor Monday.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Parker.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Pell.
Against.
Councillor Pritchard.
Against.
Councillor Radley.
Against.
Councillor Raymond.
Against.
Councillor Ritchie.
Against.
Councillor Rose.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Sandham.
For.
Councillor Miss Santamoro.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Smith.
Against.
Councillor Swear.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Spray.
Against.
Councillor Tattersley.
Against.
Councillor Thorogood.
For.
Councillor Unsworth.
For.
Councillor Van Dolken.
Against.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
Councillor Mrs Walters.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Wilson.
Against.
Councillor White.
Against.
Councillor Wrench.
Against.
And Councillor Wright.
For.
Thank you, members. The majority vote was against, Madam Chairman.
Members have voted not to extend this meeting. The remaining business on this agenda, which we cannot complete by the 3-hour point, will be considered at the next meeting of the full council. However, any questions members may have of the Cabinet can be submitted to the Governance Service and will be treated as written questions under the Constitution. Thank you very much. Closed.
Madam Chairman, if you can now introduce item 10 and we will deal with that item in the remaining period of time.
Right. Okay, we'll now pass on to item number 10. Before opening this item, please can I remind members that following our adoption of the new constitution, the council's procedural rules for this item have been changed. During this session, each member may put up to 2 questions to the Cabinet, which will be responded to by the leader of the relevant Cabinet member. Councillor Abbott, as the leader of the opposition, may put up to 4 questions to the Cabinet. Members may not ask supplementary questions. Questions should relate to the functions of the leader or a Cabinet member, the powers and duty of the council, or matters pertaining to the district. No statements may be made by councillors during this session. Where a response cannot be given during the meeting, within 10 working days of the meeting, a written answer will be issued and circulated to all members. A period of 1 hour will be allowed for this item. I may use my discretion to extend this period, but I would be grateful for members' cooperation to be as concise as possible during this item. I now invite Councillor Butland, as leader of the council, to introduce the report.
Madam Chairman, if I just may, just prior to Councillor Butland coming in, following the votes, we have a period of 45 minutes left of this meeting, and therefore we will reframe this part of the meeting to the 45 minutes left. Thank you. Sorry for interruption. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I, on behalf of my Cabinet colleagues, introduce this report. I have nothing to add, but Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, I think, would like just to make a short introduction, which I think members would be keen to hear.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schmidt.
Sorry, Chairman, my mind's gone completely blank. Members will be receiving shortly a copy of, we've had two consultations from the government, which are all part of the government's waste strategy, two of which we have just completed, one on the bottle deposit scheme and one on packaging. I had hoped that members would have received a copy today of what our response has been, but certainly they will be getting it by tomorrow. And shortly there will be one on the waste scheme, which will be a much larger one. Indeed, the paperwork, consultation of consistency in household and business recycling, which is 108 pages long. So these are important items, and members of the public or individual councillors are allowed to participate in them as individuals, as well as the council giving their own comments. Thank you, Chairman.
I think, Madam Chairman, Councillor Smith also wanted to remind members how they could respond to the two consultations on cycling and climate change.
My apologies, Chairman. Yes, I've got that written down on the page of my report. I do apologise. I should have put it at the beginning. Yes, questions had been asked about whether councillors could or should be taking part in the engagement. And of course, the answer is yes, indeed. There's not a lot of point in waiting until the September meeting, because the draft document will be presented then, and then it would be difficult to make lots and lots of alterations, and it could end up being an extremely long meeting. So yes, please, councillors, if you wish to make comments on the climate strategy, would you please do it now as part of the engagement? And the quicker you get them in, then the easier it is for staff to start putting the papers together. Please don't leave it until the day before it closes. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, your microphone is switched off, please.
I'll get the hang of this microphone in a minute. Thank you very much, Councillor Smith, and thank you, Councillor Butland. Do members have any questions for Councillor Butland and any other members of the Cabinet? If you wish to speak, can you also go through the chat function? And first of all, I think Councillor Wright.
Chairman, the first member to speak in this session is Councillor James Abbott, please.
All right, sorry, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I did have 4, but I'll keep it down to 3 in view of the time. And also, would it be possible, please, to have answers to each in turn?
Yep.
And also, just very briefly, thank you to Councillor Schmidt for clarity on councillors being able to respond to the 2 consultations. I think that's important. My first question is, I believe, to Councillor Butland. Have or will the Conservative administrations at Braintree and Essex going to resume discussions about local government reorganisation in Essex? And if so, will other serving councillors, including at BDC, be consulted on any plans for unitaries, and when will that be?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are no intentions to proceed with any discussions on local government reform from a national basis. What the leader of Essex, the new leader of Essex County Council, and his deputy leader are keen to do is to engage in conversations with the district boroughs and the city council on how the existing authorities may work closer together, either by devolving activities downwards or devolving activities upwards. In other words, one public service for all the residents of Essex. So those discussions will start taking place. The leader of Essex will be visiting all councils during June and July. And as I have the devolution portfolio, it isn't, we shouldn't get besotted with unitary things or anything. We have no idea when, if at all, the government is going to go down that line. What we are looking at is what can be done more locally, if that is the appropriate place for it to be done, and what could be done with maybe collections of districts, boroughs and cities more efficiently. And we should also remember the important role that a number of parishes and town councils play and how we can utilise that. So devolution isn't just about being besotted with the political boundaries of anything. If that comes, we will deal with it. But at the moment, that is not the top of the agenda.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wrench.
I've got my second question, Madam Chairman.
Oh, right. Sorry, I apologise.
Thank you for that answer. My second question, since the District Council's website was revamped, you now need to go through 3 pages to get to details of who local people's councillors are and the meetings and the committees they're on. And that's if you know the correct route for navigating. Can it be explained why that has happened? And surely those details should be accessible on the landing page.
With your permission, Madam Chairman, I'll ask, I think, Councillor McKee to take that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Leader. No, I can't answer that question, but I will actually take it up with ICT and come back with an answer. Are you referring to the search function? Or are you referring to, because that search function currently, I believe, does work to find a councillor and his details?
It does, but the button that used to be there where you could just go on the home page and go straight into details. If you want to try doing that, you now have to go into all council functions and then you go through 3 pages before you get to councillors and committees.
Well, the answer is actually quite complicated, Councillor Abbott, and that is to do with accessibility and the way we've built the website to meet central government guidelines. I will give you a written answer as to why it is done the way it's done. It wasn't intended to make it difficult, but it's now been much more regularized against other, maybe a councillor, sorry, maybe an officer would like to help. Sherry Root, you can answer why we've actually done it this way, because it's not our design, it's been kind of enforced upon us.
Yes, I can. It's probably easier to do it as a written response, though, if that's okay with members.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Abbott?
I look forward to receiving that, because I don't think it's ideal at the moment. But anyway, my third question, and I gave notice to Councillor Spray I would be asking this. It's about the Silver End Conservation Area Guide again. Thank you for the latest update from the senior officer this afternoon, which I read very carefully. I continue to have to try and deal as a member of Planning Committee with complex cases brought to me by residents in Silver End who simply want to change a front door, and it could take up to 2 years to do so. Whilst I'm reassured to some extent by the answer, can we please have a timetable, at the very least, setting out the steps, realistic steps, and how long it's going to take to secure a new conservation area guide for Silver End, the current one being 22 years old? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. All right, I'm happy to answer that. Yes, thank you, Councillor Abbott. It is actually good news. I think that we are going to get the ball rolling on this. As you are aware, particularly from the response that came through this afternoon, The first step is with Place Services at Essex County Council to assess the conservation area. My understanding is that they will start doing that this summer, and bearing in mind we're in June now, I think that's going to start relatively soon. I believe that the officers are just slightly reluctant to give a timetable right now, only because stage 2 comes back to this authority to have a look and see what we want to do to update the conservation guide. But the priority for both the planning policy team and the development manager team over the next few weeks is the Section 2 local plan examination. That is their focus. I think quite rightly that's top of the list. Once that is done, and once Place Services have completed step 1, we will be able to get on to step 2. But I don't disagree with you, and I will ask about a timetable, but I think probably they're slightly reluctant right now to give a timetable, only because we don't want to do that and then have it fall behind. Everybody, not least you and me, you because you keep asking the questions, and me because I have to keep answering them, are very keen to get this conservation guide updated. But I will ask the question about the timetable, and if there's any update on that, I will certainly get it to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think that's the third question, wasn't it, Councillor Abbott?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Wrench.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question's also for Councillor Mr. Spray regarding item 6.2. It is positive news to see that we have a 5-year house and land supply. So does this mean that while this is the case, speculative development on allocated and less sustainable sites will be easier for officers and the planning committee to refuse planning permission? And also, is there anything that the council can do to ensure that this stays and does not reduce in the future, or are we relying on developers building homes that they already have permission for? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wrench. Madam Chairman, I'll respond to that. Yes, I share Councillor Wrench's view that this is very good news. I would just say that having a 5-year supply, and even when we have a fully approved local plan, it doesn't stop speculative applications coming forward. You can't do that. But what it does do is to make it more comfortable, if I can put it that way, for officers and for the planning committee to refuse applications on unallocated and unsuitable sites, but also to defend those refusals at appeals if it gets to that stage. So yes, it does give us considerable comfort in that respect. With regards to his second point, yeah, absolutely. The best way to maintain a 5+ year supply is for developers to build on sites once they've been given permission. It was, I think, last week, I think it was the House Builders Federation. If it wasn't them, then I apologise, but put a statement out pushing back on the fact that developers don't get on and build, and saying, in their view, it was actually a fault in the planning system and the fault of officers and planning committees. And actually, I would refute that. We certainly in this authority, we do give permission where we feel it's acceptable. And I do think that around the country, as you know, not just in this district, but nationally, developers do quite often sit on sites and don't get on and build. So the more we can do to encourage them when they have permission to get on and build, the better it will be. And the more certain we are then of maintaining our 5-year land supply. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. If I could just interrupt, because Councillor Schmidt would like to add something to her report, which if you'd like to do this, that's absolutely fine. But there's a lot of people wanting to speak, so.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Sorry, still not used to the new system. I've got 3 items, and of course I've already done 2 of them. On Friday, I was delighted there was the chairman, yourself, Madam Chairman, Councillor Mrs. Pell and Councillor Radley and I were in attendance at the opening of a new play area in the Halstead Public Gardens. This play area is really something rather special because it is all about children with disabilities, as well as children that are haven't got disabilities. The equipment is amazing, and there's sensory planting been put in again for the children. And it was very sad actually to see the children had planted the plants in the morning, and now as our staff watering them in the pouring rain. It was a pretty grim, awful day weather-wise, but thanks to our wonderful friends, Halstead in Bloom, who helped provide funding towards it, we've got a very, very special play area. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, and I can reiterate, it really is a lovely play area. Right, Councillor Walters.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question for Councillor Tattersley. I'm referring to the town centre, and I'm thrilled a bit with the way the town centre is looking and all the improvement. But my question to Councillor Tattersley is in connection with the two benches that used to be just outside the bank. We called them chat-a-while benches, and people could sit there and just chat to anybody they wanted. And it was wonderful to see people actually making friends in the town with total strangers, which was lovely. Now, are these two benches going to be replaced? Because I think it would be a wonderful if they could be, because I think they're valuable, very valuable indeed, wonderful for people's mental health, and it also, they looked very nice as well. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Tattersley, did you want to respond?
Well, yes, I mean, the answer is I don't really know at this stage. I think we'll have to wait a little bit further into the town centre, but I will find out and I will let people know. It's something now that I will need to negotiate with Councillor Ritchie over, because that's in his portfolio, but it was a good initiative. We were a little bit sceptical about whether it worked, but I agree with you, it worked extremely well. So I'd be disappointed if it went, but I don't know. I can't say authoritatively whether they'll stay or whether they'll go, but I will let you know.
Thank you very much. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I've got a question for Councillor Frankie Ritchie, the Cabinet Member for Communities, on item number 8.2. I'm very pleased that the Councillor Community Grant continues for this year, as it's proved very popular and enables district councillors to support their local groups and communities. This year it focuses on COVID recovery. Could the Cabinet Member please explain or give examples of what types of projects might be acceptable to meet the COVID recovery criteria? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Garrett. The simple answer is it can be spent on anything. Again, but we've particularly picked up on the issues that we've experienced over the past year. I think we've kind of got two extremes here. We've got some groups or volunteer groups who have had to quite limit themselves over the past year due to some of the provisions that they've provided within communities and villages, rural areas, etc. Then we've had those on the other end of the spectrum who have started up during the pandemic purely to serve during the pandemic. So it's really to kind of aid both of those groups, either in continuing what they've started, if it's a new group that's assisted within the community, or to allow those groups that have had to kind of close down or reduce their offering to kind of soft start and get themselves back into the community again. On top of that, please just remember that it is available for other community initiatives too. So it doesn't necessarily or strictly have to be towards a COVID recovery. It is for spend within your area, your wards, within your parishes, to really kind of give everyone a boost back as we recover over the next few months. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Euston.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for Councillor Bowers on page 60, item 5.2, affordable housing. 49 completions in April is an excellent start for the year. Do we have details of how they're distributed across the district? And by that I mean, are they predominantly town or are they spread across the whole of the district? And do we also have similar information for the 220 new affordable homes delivered in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Euston. Thank you for the lovely comment and also the question. Firstly, I think it's good news that the affordable homes for last year and this coming year are distributed around the whole district and across several sites. So we're not really, it's a mixture of town and rural, and we're not relying on obviously just one location, as well as our three main towns in the district, obviously Braintree, Witham and Halstead. Sites as part of the affordable housing programme for the last year and this coming year include Hatfield, Peveril, Coggeshall, Earlscombe, Cressing, Finchinfield, Great Yeldham, Ridgewell. So it is definitely all over the district. During April, the 49 new affordable home completions were on sites in Braintree, Halstead, Earlscombe, Hatfield, Peveril and Ridgewell, just to confirm that. Also, following on from your comments and in the report from the April numbers for affordable housing, as you mentioned, the excellent start to the year, I'm pleased to update Council that in May 2021, there were 23 affordable housing completions on sites in Braintree, Halstead, Earlscombe, Hatfield, Peveril and Witham, which brings the total to the year now to 72 completions. For June, I'm pleased that we anticipate there will be around 50 further completions. So as reported previously, the affordable housing programme looks very positive. With the housing market remaining buoyant and house building actively progressing, we remain confident the annual planned target of 250 homes will be exceeded, which is fantastic news. At the present time, we anticipate the outturn figure of the year to be in excess of 300 homes. We will continue to monitor the programme and report further should the situation change. But I'm sure members will agree it's very much a very good news story for the council and our residents. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dervish.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mine's more of a statement on item 5.1 found on page 60 with regards to domestic abuse. I just want to say I welcome the new legislation and look forward to its implementation and adoption by Braintree District Council. One will hope there will be further revenues grants received, as I'm sure 32,000 will not go far enough, but certainly very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. My question is for Councillor Spray, and it's on Silver End Surgery and the 106 monies. It's how much has now been accrued from developers' contributions, and what plans are there for an upgrade given that the steadily rise in local population due to all the housing development in Silver End and Cressing?
Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Wright. I don't have that information to hand right now. I will get you a written response ASAP. All right? I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And my question is to Councillor Spray on 6.1 development plans. Given the critical comments by members of the administration about the government-appointed independent local plan inspector, who of course has no right of reply, for refusing permission for the garden communities east and west of Braintree, would the Cabinet member care to comment on whether the leader and deputy leader would have made similar comments had these two new towns in fact been approved? Thank you.
Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. No, I have no comment to make at the moment in response to that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's more of a statement question. I would like to pass my congratulations to the Cabinet member and the officers for the portfolio of finance and corporate transformation, who have delivered and continued to deliver an excellent customer service. Looking at the statistics on the page 57, para 2.6 of the agenda, the average call answering time for the year was 29 seconds, with 74% of the calls answered within 15 seconds. This is an exceptional and must exceptional service and hard work and must be recognized. In customer service satisfaction of 2020 to 2021, 98.59% positive results was achieved. I would say customer satisfaction was achieved. The results are slightly higher than any previous results and have improved by 2.6% since 2018. I would like to pass my congratulations to the team and the officers. It is a tremendous job done by the officers and must be recognised. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. And we actually, because we're running out of time, we will only have a chance to have the questions asked, and the answers will have to be written answers later on. So, Councillor Beavis.
To the portfolio of Councillor Wendy Schmidt. What further steps have been taken by the council to reduce litter and to work with local businesses to reduce plastic and unnecessary packaging? My question follows.
Apologies, Councillor Bates. So apologies, Councillor Bates, to interrupt you. Your question was, we couldn't hear your question. I don't believe Councillor Schmidt could hear that. So would you like to ask that again, please?
Thank you, Emma. Can you hear me?
We can, that's better, thank you.
Oh, that's great. I've got a terrible reception. I do apologise. My question is to Councillor Wendy Schmidt, portfolio. What further steps can be taken by our council to reduce litter and to work with local businesses to reduce plastic and unnecessary packaging? My question follows the huge volunteering effort in the Hedinghams and around our district, particularly during the time of the pandemic, when litter seems to have increased, particularly on the outskirts of the villages where it's really difficult for volunteers to collect safely. Thank you.
Chairman, your microphone was switched off, and Councillor Schmidt was to respond to that question, please.
Apparently, Councillor Schmidt.
Sorry, I thought we were just getting questions, and
I thought we were too, but apparently we're not.
Madam Chairman, if I can clarify, you still have 20 minutes of the meeting remaining, therefore it would be sensible to continue with responses in the normal way. If I can hand over to Councillor Smith to respond.
Right, thank you, Madam Chairman. Right, litter. Yes, it's been appalling. I don't know what's happened to people since they've been at home. They just seem to have been, some of them, of course, the majority of people are okay, but the litter bugs seem to have thought that lockdown has given them a free pass for throwing litter. It has been appalling. We have, as you have seen, put up trial notices on the main thoroughfares to remind the public that littering is illegal. I would still remind members that if you see someone throwing litter, report them, we will fine them. We have updated all sorts of our Facebook pages. We have used some very robust language, trying to get through to these vile people. I'm not quite sure what it takes. There's something really wrong with the moral compass of some people. We are sending out teams where there are really bad littering places. I'm not really sure what more we can do. We have tried every project possible. We've just got to try and name and shame them, and that's by catching them. So I would ask everyone to be vigilant. As for, sadly, the pandemic has meant that a great deal more plastic in packaging has been used than before. Companies were being very good on getting rid of one-use, sauces and things like that. Sadly, the pandemic has made things step back somewhat, I'm afraid, on the use of packaging and plastics. And we hope that when we get back to normal, that we can remind companies and everyone to try and stop the use of single plastics. And of course, that is all part and parcel of the climate change. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Thorogood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got two questions for Councillor Spray, planning issues. In 6.4, The Cabinet member refers in her report to the member forum proposals for planning applications, and that officers will be working on detailed proposals. There seems to be a lot of confusion in the parish councils that I meet regularly with. Obviously, the scheme of delegation seems to have started, but there's no clarity regarding the members' forums about when they're going to start. So can you tell me how and when will council members be consulted on what's going on? And is there a date of when members' forums will start? And my other question is regarding 6.2. The section 2 of the local plan examination takes place next month, and it is noted that BVC now has a 5-year supply, which is very welcome. But does Councillor Mrs Spray think that there's a possibility that the local plan, or Braintree might have to start the local plan all over again should the Conservative government's proposed changes to the planning system goes ahead? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. The Members' Forum officers are at the moment working up a number of details for it, because criteria need to be set. They are also having conversations with governance, because there needs to be involvement from governance officers during these forum meetings. So that is underway at the moment. And once some of those proposals have been firmed up, then we will come back to members for some consultation. So I don't have a date for that at the moment, but it is underway. And as soon as we have something firmer, then members will, of course, be notified. Obviously, you know, we are keen to get it going because it will help with the larger applications that are coming forward, but it's sort of in train. With regard to the 5-year supply, well, local plans have to be reviewed regularly, and it's a certain that actually almost no sooner have we got this one fully approved, which I'm sincerely hoping will be by the end of this year, then we will be starting on a review for the next one. And in the meantime, yes, you're quite right, the government have got various proposals for changes to the planning system, which you can be sure officers are keeping a close watch on. And if there are changes to the system, we will just have to adapt and go with it. At the moment, focus is very much in getting the current draft plan approved by the end of this year, and then we will have to see where we go from there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A question for Councillor Cunningham. As we come out of lockdown and the pandemic eases, are we taking as a council any steps to try to encourage to build confidence, particularly for people going shopping, and to support our retailers across all the towns and the larger villages? And are we taking any steps, or is it possible indeed to sort of monitor footfall to see whether confidence is coming back and footfall is increasing in the towns? Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We will certainly be doing all we can, not just to advise traders in our towns and village centres over appropriate procedures as unlocking measures continue to progress. We will also be ensuring as we came out of the last lockdown last year, continuing to encourage residents through a number of initiatives to support local businesses. That will continue through the summer and as we lead up to the Christmas period. We'll also work with our town centre managers, our town centre retail shopping centres such as George Yard, Newlands, Grove, to see what information they can give us of measuring footfall, so we can continue to play our part in helping encourage people back into our towns and village centres. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weeks.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to ask Councillor Spray a question, please. I'd like to know why there's so little progress being made on improvements at the Little Elms shop area in Witton. I took a picture of it today. This was about 2 o'clock. And sorry, it really does. I don't know if you can see. It really does look run down. A report was published by BDC in September 2010, which is nearly 11 years ago, with the title of the Rickstones Neighbourhood Centre Development Brief. Is BDC still committed to improvements there? And if so, how do we move forward given the rundown state of the area? Has BDC considered siting a GP surgery there to serve the ever-increasing population of North Witton and Rivenhall, as it is much needed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It really wasn't terribly easy to see that picture, Councillor. No, it's all right. I will talk to officers and I will have to get you a written response on that. All right, I'll do that as soon as I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll forward you the picture.
Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to just start my question to Councillor Spray, unfortunately keeping her busy tonight, with a quote from an email that I got from one of my residents. It is completely inexcusable for BDC to operate this policy of avoidance, apparently do nothing, not communicating, effectively treating enforcement inquiries as low priority nuisance to be dismissed in terms of their standard, don't call us, we'll call you letter, and hoping complainants will just give up the thankless task of fighting institutional inertia. With respect to the section I think it is 6.5 planning enforcement, is the Cabinet member confident that the enforcement issues are being fully investigated and updates are being provided? I fully acknowledge that there's pressure on the service, but we would hope that we'd agree the statements made in public, and this email accompanied a letter from the enforcement actually saying, you know, effectively, we'll call you. Unfortunately, this demonstrates not always the experience of members on this side of the chamber who've submitted planning enforcement cases, and it was as I've just stated, it's not being handled particularly well. So I would ask if you could comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, Chairman. Yes, I'll comment on that. Thank you, Councillor Unsworth. We know, because I have said on a number of occasions, the pressure that the enforcement team are under. I'm pleased to say that recruitment has improved and continues to improve over the last, just very recently, over the last few weeks. So that will help. I strongly refute the suggestion that enforcement cases are not investigated and are set to one side. They do have to prioritise, but they've always done that. Anything, for example, involving unauthorised works to listed buildings, that's just one example, gets a priority. But all cases are investigated, they are looked at. There may be a delay at the moment, a slightly longer delay than normal, but nothing is ignored, and officers continue to work to the best of their ability to investigate all enforcement complaints and to resolve them. I am absolutely confident that everything is in hand, and I hope I will have a slightly fuller report to give, probably at the next full council, when I will have received a bit more of an update on recruitment. But everything is in hand, and I really just want to assure parish councils and residents, I get emails on this too, that all complaints are investigated and are looked at. Nothing is being ignored. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, for Wendy, Councillor Smith. First of all, can I praise and welcome the extension of the grass verge cutting policy that you put into place, and hope that it carries on for further years for the whole of the district. And it fitted nicely with the No Mow May initiative, which proved very beneficial for the wildflowers, with some photographed rare species managing to break through. And I thought you'd like to know that. I took some pictures. Also, I think all sides of this chamber support your worthwhile policy on this. But further to that, I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member, Wendy Smith, could you please say what will be the all-party process for amending and improving the climate change and cycling strategies in response from residents during the public consultation, bearing in mind what you've already done for all those no-mo areas? Thank you very much.
Councillor Smith.
Councillor Hicks, first of all, yes, I appreciated you sent me an email too. I appreciated that. Needless to say, we have had complaints from people because it's looking untidy. And I'm really sorry, I didn't quite catch the second part of your question about the climate change strategy. If you could just repeat it, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Could you please, what will be the all-party process for amending and improving the climate change and cycling strategies in response from residents during this public consultation? Thank you.
What will happen is all of the ideas, recommendations that come in from the public will be looked at. We know there'll be ones that are not relevant. There'll be ones that are relevant. They'll be put into a document, and that is the document that will be discussed at the special council meeting in September. Then it's up to council to make a decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Swear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have two questions. Could I first address my first question to Councillor Spray? With renewable energy schemes increasingly important to address climate change and reduce carbon emissions, is it likely that solar power will be a key building block of any future energy generation mix, resulting in solar farm applications coming forward to BDC? Do we have a solar farm supplementary planning document to provide guidance on how these applications should be determined? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take that question from Councillor Schwer. Thank you. The answer is no. Currently, this authority doesn't have a supplementary planning document on solar farms. We get really very few applications for solar farms in comparison with other types of planning applications. Obviously, as I say that, I'm aware that there is a very big proposal for a large solar farm, which is going to affect this district, although that is an application which is Essex County Council's, but of the applications that we receive as an authority, we get very few. I will take it forward with officers. I'll flag it up to them. We have got a fairly long list of SPDs, which will need to be reviewed once the local plan is approved, on such things as design, affordable housing, developer contributions, or so on. Those are the priority ones. So I think an SPD on solar farms, although I appreciate it's a point well made, will have to take its place in the queue, because I think if we were to introduce it any earlier and start work on it any earlier, it would bump off one of the others from the list. So it might just have to take its place in the queue. But thank you for the point, Councillor Chair. I say it's a point well made, and I will take it up with officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Councillor Cunningham, do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, a question to Councillor Mrs. Smith, if I may. Will Councillor Mrs. Smith agree and welcome that the Conservative Party's national policy of trebling tree planting by 2024 is excellent, that their legally binding target to halt species decline by 2030 is excellent, and will she also agree with me that when it comes to this agenda, whether it's nature, encouraging sustainable transport, or creating new, exciting jobs in the green economy, it's only really the Conservative Party who can deliver. Others may just shout at the sidelines. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. How could I do anything but agree entirely with what Councillor Cunningham has said? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, we've now come to reached the end of our time, and so I will call this item to a close, I'm afraid. Any member wishing to ask a question and hasn't been able to do so, and I think actually we seem to have got to the bottom of the list, but sorry? Right. But you requested to submit the question to the governance service, and a response will be issued in accordance with the written question procedure. Members, item 11 will be carried forward to the next meeting. So I will now close this meeting of full council, and thank you very much. Have a lovely evening, and please go home. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Before we terminate this broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel, just to remind members, we will retain performance data to your link in the event that we do have a challenge. So can the webcasting officer confirm the close of the broadcast?